It should be loading, Luke.
I think I got it.
There we go. I think we're live. Brady got it on his phone, so that. No, we can't even hear it. So everything that we've seen over the past, especially over the past few weeks, has been leading up to Paul making his way to Rome. Today he starts that journey. He doesn't quite finish that journey, but he starts that journey, and he goes on what can only be considered the worst trip to Rome that he could have taken. And I was reading a commentator about this, and he said, there's some people who just love to sail and they just yearn for the sea. First time I ever got on a boat was when they put us on to go over to Vietnam. So he doesn't love boats. I don't think Paul loves boats after this trip. But walk me through where we've been. How did we get to this spot?
Nobody found anything would. It's been tried, or at least tried to be tried several times, and nobody could find anything wrong. But because he had appealed to Caesar, they are sending him to Caesar.
Yeah. And
Paul is really he knows where he's going.
Yeah.
He knows where he's going.
Absolutely. And he's been incredibly patient through this. Years have gone by of him just hanging out, just waiting to see what's going to happen next. And so finally, the king of last week's scripture, King Agrippa, rose, and the governor and Bernice and those who were sitting with them, when they had withdrawn, they said to one another, "This man is doing nothing to deserve death or imprisonment." So they sent him to Caesar. But Agrippa also made a point to say, this man could have been set free if he had not appealed to Caesar. So we're going to make our trip to Rome now. If somebody would read for us verses 1 through 8 of chapter 27.
Okay.
Thanks, Brett.
When the time came, we set sail for Italy. Paul and several other prisoners were placed in the custody of an army officer named Julius, a captain of the imperial regiment. And Aristarchus, a Macedonian from Thessalonica, was also with us. We left on a boat whose home port was some symbol from the periodic table. A from Timian. It was scheduled to make several stops at ports along the coast of the province of Asia. The next day, we docked at Sidon, and Julius was very kind to Paul and let him go ashore to visit with friends so they could provide for his needs. Putting out to sea from there, we encountered headwinds that made it difficult to keep the ship on course, so we sailed north of Cyprus between the island and the mainland. We passed along the coast of the provinces of Sicilia and Pamphylia, landing at Myra in the province of Lycia. There the officer found an Egyptian ship from Alexandria that was bound for Italy, and he put us on board. We had several days of rough sailing, and after great difficulty, we finally neared Cydnus, but the wind was against us, so we sailed to the leeward side of Crete, past the Cape of Salmon. We struggled along the coast with great difficulty and finally arrived at Fair Havens near the city of Lasea.
Awesome. Thank you.
That was it.
That was perfect. That was a lot of names.
So, Luke gets really wordy.
He sure does.
He's going to tell you every place they stopped along the way.
Yeah. But that brings up a point that Luke is with him.
Yeah.
That's right. We realize that.
We
Yeah.
set sail for Italy.
Which it almost suggests that Luke has been around this whole time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's been watching all this stuff happen. Now when the story's getting juicy and good, he's gonna include himself in it. We should sail for Italy. But who else is on the boat with them?
Some other prisoners.
Bunch of other prisoners. Julius, the centurion, which, if I remember right, we've been introduced to Julius previously. We've seen him before, which makes sense to why, as it says, Julius treated Paul kindly.
He's kind, yeah.
He was not scared of Paul trying to jump off the ship, not scared of Paul trying to run away. He trusted Paul.
Yeah.
Probably because Paul the whole time has been saying, "Y'all, I'm going to Rome."
Well, you know, he's been teaching you about God.
Right. He had to have been. And so this whole time, Paul he's evangelizing, because that's what Paul does. But on top of that, he's not showing any signs of stress because he knows where he's going.
Well, and Julius probably also knows that he hasn't been found guilty of anything, so I mean, even if he did escape, what does
Yeah.
it really matter?
That's true. That's really true. I hadn't thought of that.
Yeah.
And so they are fighting against the wind. And it'll say here in a little bit that they are traveling during the fast, which historically we believe that to be around middle of October. And so at this point in time, the weather starts to change in mid-September. And so they would stop trying to take this trek because they knew the winds were going to be against them. When you have a bunch of prisoners on board, I guess you don't care as much. And so they pushed on through. And so they are going to be fighting this battle of weather until they land, really, or try to land.
Well, the shipping actually shut down from mid-November to February.
I think mid-September.
Well, it was bad from mid-September to
Yeah.
mid-November, but it actually just shut down after
Hmm.
mid-November. So the commerce shut down. Yeah.
Right. Because it was not worth the fight. You would lose too many people. You would see what's about to happen to Paul happen to them.
And whatever you're carrying.
Yeah,
This part here was really bad.
this was.
Yeah.
And so I'll read for us 9 through 12. So much time, since much time had passed, and the voyage was now dangerous because even the fast was already over, so it's past the middle of October. Paul advised them, saying, "Sirs, I perceive that the voyage will be with injury and much loss, not only of the cargo and the ship, but also of our lives." This is a pretty good warning from Paul. Hey, we're going to lose a whole lot of stuff, including some of you. Not me, because I'm going to Rome, but we're going to lose some of you. But the centurion paid more attention to the pilot and to the owner of the ship than to what Paul said. Because the harbor was not suitable to spend the winter in, the majority decided to put out to sea from there on the chance that somehow they could reach Phoenix, a harbor in Crete, facing both southwest and northwest, and spend the winter there. So Paul is saying probably over and over again, not a good idea. We shouldn't do this. Let's just be patient for a little bit. But the centurion, Julius, listens to the pilot and the owner of the boat, which makes sense because they are people who know boats.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna listen to the professionals here, Paul. And so they had to make a decision. Do we wait it out in Lycia or do we try and go to Phoenix? And their result was, let's try to go to Phoenix. And so now would somebody read for us verses 13 through 20?
I will.
Thanks, Krista.
When a gentle south wind began to blow, they saw their opportunity, so they weighed anchor and sailed along the shore of Crete. Before very long, a wind of hurricane force called the Northeaster swept down from the island. The ship was caught by the storm and could not head into the wind, so we gave way to it and were driven along. As we passed to the lee of a small island called Cauda, We were hardly able to make the lifeboat secure, so the men hoisted it aboard. Then they passed ropes under the ship itself to hold it together. Because they were afraid they would run aground on the sandbars of Syrtis, they lowered the sea anchor and let the ship be driven along. We took such a violent battering from the storm that the next day they began to throw the cargo overboard. On the third day, they threw the ship's tackle overboard with their own hands. When neither sun nor stars appeared for many days and the storm continued raging, we finally gave up all hope of being saved.
Awesome, thank you. What does this remind you of?
Jonah.
Jonah. Absolutely.
What?
It's Jonah.
Oh, that's good.
That they have a prophet, they have a man of the Lord on the boat. A giant storm comes in. This one's called the Northeaster. And they're doing anything they can to make this work. Throwing cargo overboard. Which is what we saw the mariners do in Jonah. But what's the big difference?
They threw their tackle overboard.
Yeah, threw their tackle overboard as well.
Not good.
Paul wasn't running away from God.
Absolutely. Jonah was running from God, Paul was running to God. It's pretty amazing when you put those two next to each other to see the difference. And the situations are very, very similar. And so we see Paul, who again has this peace that surpasses all understanding because he knows, y'all, I'm going to Rome. I'm sure he just kept saying that over and over again. If he were like me, he would keep saying that over and over again. Which my middle name's Paul, so it's probably where I get it. And so they have lost all hope. When the mariners and Jonah lost all hope, what'd they do? What was their decision?
Throw Jonah out.
And get that guy out of here. And so Jonah says, it's me. I'm the one who's causing this to happen. And he tests them and he says, get me out of here. Throw me off. You won't. Of course they do. But now would somebody read for us verses 21 through 26.
Since they had been without food for a long time, Paul stood up among them and said, Men, you should have listened to me and not have set sail from Crete and incurred this injury and loss. Yet, now I urge you to take heart, for there will be no loss of life among you, but only of the ship. For this very night there stood before me an angel of the God to whom I belong and whom I worship. And he said, Do not be afraid, Paul. You must stand before Caesar. And behold, God has granted you all those who sail with you. So take heart, men, for I have faith in God that it will be exactly as I have been told. But we must run aground on some island.
Awesome. Thank you. This is a turning point. What happens here?
I mean, he says, I was right, you were wrong. You know,
I told you so.
yeah.
I informed you thusly.
This whole time he's been saying, y'all, I'm going to Rome.
Yeah.
But isn't this an indication that, this is, Paul is telling exactly what's going to happen?
Yeah.
So the angel of God or who came to him told him the future, basically.
Yeah. It is interesting that, from Peter's visions, even the visions that Paul has had, they've all been very well documented.
Yeah.
And this one, it's like Paul pulls it out of left field. I had a vision last night, y'all. I'm sure Paul said y'all.
Of course he did.
Yeah. But what do you think is going through the minds of everybody else on the ship in this moment?
They're going back.
they're gonna die.
Well, they're desperate, yeah. I mean, they've
No
thrown
food.
overboard all their food. And like, I even have a note that, that says that, what was it called? That like they threw over the, what was it? The tackle, may have been the beam that supported like the actual mainsail. So it's like they're literally ditching everything. So
Yeah.
they're just desperate and lost, and and then like Paul stands up there calm, said, "I told you so. Now listen to me again."
Yeah,
And it's like God told me nothing's gonna happen, so here's what we have to do.
yeah,
Here's what's gonna happen.
We're gonna wreck,
Here's-
but nobody's
You're
gonna
not
die.
gonna die.
Yeah, and so I have faith that it'll be exactly as I have been told, but we must find an island.
right.
So, okay, I'm in charge now. Look at me, I am the captain now.
Yeah, that's exactly what he said.
Exactly.
You're not the captain, he's the commander.
There we go. But I do think it's really interesting that they are, excuse me, they are panicking, right? Rightfully so. They're in the middle of this terrible storm. They're sure that they are not going to make it. And so they do what any logical person would do. They start throwing all their stuff over the ship. And this whole time they wouldn't have seen Paul doing this. They wouldn't have seen him freaking out. The question was asked is, what's different about this guy?
Yeah.
And he says, this very night there stood before me an angel of my God.
You need to listen to him.
Yeah,
They finally realized it.
I mean, and even like Julius knew this.
right?
Yeah.
I mean, he's had a long history. Luke's obviously there, and Luke,
Yeah,
It's the
Luke
same
doesn't
thing.
write how he is reacting in these moments.
yeah, exactly. He's like, "Oh, are you sure we're gonna be okay?"
This is kind of the story of John Wesley a little bit, when he was coming from England to America and they were in this huge ship, and John Wesley, feared for his life, but there was a group of Moravians on the ship and they were praising God for the rain in that moment. And so this was a big faith turning point for him when he saw they weren't fearing for their lives, but they were praising God in the moment. I think that's what we see Paul do here.
Because again, he knows that it might suck right now, but he's going to Rome.
Yeah,
Somehow, some way, he's gonna make it to Rome.
yeah.
So he can have.
I mean, he tells him again, y'all,
Might have to swim to Rome, but I'll be there.
I'm gonna get there.
I'm gonna get there.
God told me I'm going to stand before Caesar.
You know that when the sea gets tempestuous like this, it is very scary.
Yeah,
These are not big boats.
right.
No, yeah,
This is
a pretty small boat.
I went to the ship, on a cruise ship, to Europe in December.
Hmm.
When we hit the North Atlantic, that big cruise ship.
yeah,
And although
no.
people didn't, I don't know if they were fearful people, but they were throwing up every close.
Yeah, that does not sound like a fun
And
time.
this was no fun thing, they were.
You just changed
Realize
Brady's
how
honeymoon
they can-
plans.
As I say, cruise off the list.
Nope.
No. But yeah, and so it's like, if it's bad
It's
in this
scary.
massive ship that's, big, that's the size of like a skyscraper, whatever. I mean, like super long, wide, able to handle whatever, hopefully an iceberg or two. The Titanic, I mean, this is a small
It's
coasting
scary.
vessel. This is a tiny little boat that's agile,
Yeah.
but not designed to take too much damage.
Right,
And they're facing this kind of stuff.
yeah. And so Paul speaks a word of peace to them.
There's,
Because he's probably the only person who feels at peace
Right,
in this
Yeah.
entire situation.
yeah. No matter what Luke may want you to believe, he was probably losing his mind a little bit too. Right, Luke?
Luke can speak for all Luke's.
Are you there?
So let's read now, if somebody would, verses 27 through 32. Thanks, Ron.
But when the 14th night had come, as we were driven up and down in the Adriatic Sea, about midnight the sailors sensed that they were drawing near to some land. And they took soundings and found it to be 20 fathoms. And when they had gone a little further, they took soundings again, found it to be 15 fathoms. Then fearing lest we should run aground on the rocks, we dropped 4 anchors from the stern and prayed for it day to come. And as the sailors were seeking to escape from the ship, and they had let down the skiff into the sea under pretense of putting out anchors from the prow, Paul said to the centurion and the soldiers, unless these men stay in the ship, you cannot be saved. And the soldiers cut away the ropes of the skiff and let it fall over.
Thank you.
He still knows, he's still in control of what he should be doing.
Yeah. And it's interesting that he just made this divine comment of, my God came to me and said, we're going to be okay.
You're gonna be okay.
And now the result is when these people are facing fear, they start to pray. That doesn't necessarily say they're praying to God, but they're praying. So they're moving toward faith in these moments. And so they are getting closer to land. They know that they are. They throw over 4 anchors. They're going to stop this ship if anything they can do. And they prayed, Lord, just let us see where we're going now. Give us the light to see. Bring us today. And for the fact that this is about midnight, it's going to be a while until the sun comes up. It's a long time to be praying. And Paul said to the centurion and the soldiers, unless these men stay in the ship, you cannot be saved. And the soldiers cut away the ropes of the ship's boat and let it go. Yeah.
They thought that might be their only way to be saved.
Right. Yeah, it makes sense. We're this close to land. I can make that. I can swim that far. Would have been a mistake, as Paul lets them know. And so verse 33 says, as day was about to dawn, Paul urged them all to take food, saying, today is the 14th day that you have continued in suspense and without food, having taken nothing. Therefore I urge you to take some food, for it will give you strength. For not a hair is to perish from the head of any of you. And when he had said these things, he took bread, and giving thanks to God in the presence of all, he broke it and began to eat. And they all were encouraged and ate some food themselves. We were in all 276 persons in the ship. And when they had eaten enough, they lightened the ship, throwing out the wheat into the sea. So Paul is showing hospitality 101 here. You guys we've been in this for 14 days. You've been constantly working. You've been constantly panicking, constantly anxious. You haven't eaten. This is going to help you. Let's eat, and not a hair is to perish from the head of any of you. Remember, this whole time, Paul has been the only one who has been a sense of peace.
Yeah.
He's been the only one with a sense of calm.
Yeah.
And I'm sure in that moment of exhaustion, when he says, nothing's going to happen to you, not even a hair on your head, they say, I want to believe you. I trust what you're saying to me. And so they ate, and there was enough for everybody, which this almost seems like I don't think it is, but this reads like Jesus feeding the masses. That a few loaves of bread lasted for longer than it needed to. Kind of what it
Threw
sounds
the
like.
extra over, yeah.
Mhm. Who knows how much bread they had, but
Yeah.
it is interesting that the Lord is going to supply exactly what they needed. And then even the peace of mind to say, okay, we've eaten, we're full, let's get rid of this weight too. And that had to have made them feel better to say like, okay, we can make it past this. And so there's 276 persons in the ship.
So the boat's probably bigger than you think.
Yeah.
Boat's not small.
I was like,
It's it's not a fishing boat by any means.
No,
It is a great.
But-
it's a cargo ship, so it's gonna be bigger, because that was their trade.
Right. But even then, it's,
But against the sea, it's not,
and it's wood and it's,
it could have been new.
So like, I have a note that says that the number of 276 passengers was not too great for large grain ships, which were up to 100 feet. So, pretty big.
that's a big boat.
Big boat. And obviously, still relatively small, extremely small to what we think of and get set of
Sea.
giant like cruise ships.
Yeah.
But capable, but also a few big waves can really do some damage to this thing.
You
Right.
see all the ships that sail that are down under the water.
Hmm.
They
Yeah.
do those specials on the Adriatic Sea in that area.
Yeah.
A lot of them make it, they were big boats, and mostly commerce boats.
Right.
It is,
Yeah.
So when you start wrapping a ship together with rope to keep from falling
Yeah.
apart.
Yeah, I was gonna say, not really in pretty good
Yeah.
shape.
You're struggling there. So now let's get to the fun part. Somebody read for us verses 39 through the end of the chapter.
All right, I'll do it.
Thanks, Brett.
When morning dawned, they did not recognize the coastline, but they saw a bay with a beach and wondered if they could get between the rocks and get the ship safely to the shore. So they cut the anchors and left them in the sea. Then they lowered the rudders, raised the foresail, and headed toward shore. But the ship hit a shoal and ran aground. The bow of the ship stuck fast, while the stern was repeatedly smashed by the force of the waves and began to break apart. The soldiers wanted to kill the prisoners to make sure they didn't swim ashore to escape, but the commanding officer wanted to spare Paul, so he didn't let them carry out their plan. Then he ordered all who could swim to jump overboard first and make for land. He told the others to try for it on planks and debris from the broken ship. So everyone escaped safely ashore.
Amazing.
wow.
Yet another plan, though, for people to kill Paul.
Yeah.
But another plan that gets foiled, right?
Yeah.
This one isn't necessarily directed at Paul, but he was a prisoner in this
Yeah.
moment.
He would have perished.
But how many of these were prisoners of the majority of them, maybe?
I don't know majority, but a handful for sure. I'm not sure how many it is.
Yeah.
Trying to see through study notes if it says anywhere for me. I'm not sure.
But certainly Paul was included in that number.
Absolutely.
Centurion wasn't gonna let that happen
Right.
again.
Yeah. And so the boat ride comes to an end. It's pretty amazing to think of this story from Paul leading up from what we've read the past few weeks into today, because in a lot of ways it mirrors Jesus's story, right?
Yeah.
Paul saw Herod, he saw Festus, he saw Agrippa, he's making his way to Rome. Jesus saw Pontius Pilate, he saw Herod, he saw officials. All of these things that Jesus went through, Paul is starting to mirror in his ministry here. Why is that significant?
These things is like I shouldn't, I don't, this word doesn't, I say it. Things are preordained, and there are things that are gonna happen similar to other times, and there are things, and especially when it comes to Christ, what his ministry was,
Yeah,
to see those same things come in another form, kind of, that, I think that's significant.
yeah. One of my favorite things that the Methodist Church has written, or my favorite liturgy, is our baptismal liturgy. And when we baptize an infant or an adult, anybody, we as a congregation come together and we say that we will so order our lives after the example of Christ,
Yes.
that whoever this person is will see Christ through us. It says it in much prettier words than that, but that's what it says.
Yeah.
Paul is a living example of the gospel here.
Yeah.
He is not afraid. He is not ashamed. He's going to carry the gospel to wherever it needs to go.
And he's also giving them a way to survive. I mean, he's done those things for them to be saved.
Yeah,
Who else did that?
yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Do you think Paul can sense that the end of his life is coming?
I think so.
Probably.
Yeah,
What was the lifespan at that point in time,
I'm not sure.
you know? I mean, was it, I would imagine 70 or 80 was pretty old.
Yeah.
It would be pretty old.
And there's not many people that reach that age.
No,
Yeah,
So
he's
he's,
average for us nowadays, so.
he's in his 60s by the time he gets here, right? So,
right.
Yeah, he's.
There has to be something there that we've never known. He's got some problems,
For sure.
maybe physical.
Well, yeah, he got beaten to death off, you know?
But I mean, he's
Took the
Still
last
got-
one
He
down.
probably has a bad
got
back.
some problems that are,
Bad head,
Yeah,
could be fatal in the long term.
Yeah.
And,
Well, he basically walked 5,000 miles
right.
Yeah,
in his life, or even more.
Oh, yeah.
yeah,
And he was hunchback too,
Yeah.
right? I mean,
Yeah, he was stooped and, had short legs, so he couldn't walk very fast.
he's not really portrayed that way in some,
he's not. I mean, in Corsicana, and a lot of churches, but Corsicana for sure, they have pictures of the apostles, those old paintings. And the picture of Paul is this like ripped up old dude,
Yeah.
just like
Jacked.
yeah.
Yeah, he was-
you get like they
Beard.
threw in the veins in his arms kind of thing to make sure you know how strong he
Yeah, he
was.
was a stout guy from working,
Yeah,
Yeah.
Tell you, every time I see the Miracle Grow man, James Whitmore, that's who I think about.
Yeah.
I mean, every situation that like Paul gets himself into, or maybe not that he gets himself into, that he finds himself in, is getting more and more severe.
yeah,
As far as the threat to his life. I mean, he's been in jail for forever, and he was, beat, and then now he's on a ship that he knew was doomed to fail, and he was like, man, things just keep getting worse around me.
yeah,
And so I'm sure that probably contributed to it a little bit as well. Just realizing that like it's not like spreading the gospel isn't all sunshine and rainbows, and
right.
it was for maybe like a little while, but now it's really a little treacherous.
Yeah, he's weathered at this point.
It probably
He's Jack now.
That's right. I've seen the picture on the wall.
He
From
talks
some
about
guy.
the predetermination of God
Hmm.
in Romans.
Right?
Not a whole lot, but he does talk about it, so
Yeah,
I think.
he's probably portrayed like that because he's a tough old bird.
right.
Yeah, he's seen a lot,
I
done a
know
lot.
somebody like that.
Yeah,
And,
maybe.
yeah.
So consensus here, Paul can sense that the end of his life is coming. He knows he's innocent. He's been essentially let free multiple times at this point.
Yeah.
Why does he want to go to Caesar?
That's what God told him to.
So God told him to.
or at least he said, you are going to Rome.
Yeah,
All right, go
He
to
knows
Rome.
he needs to be there for some reason. He
Right.
may not know why, but he knows he needs to
Exactly.
be there.
Exactly.
there has to be some motivation, I would think, of if I can just talk to Caesar and I can preach the sermon that I've preached a million times, Jesus crucified, Jesus resurrected,
Changes everything.
that trickles down from the very top.
Yeah.
It changes everything.
I,
Well, he's talking to the top people, and that gives credence to this whole story.
right?
Not that he's just going out and talking to a bunch of people, but
Yeah.
he's talking to people that really, really matter and can make a difference.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's why he wants to get to Caesar.
And when he talks to these people, the good always wins.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. The gospel's not muted here.
But it's also interesting how Paul could have been a free man if he didn't try to appeal to Caesar.
Yeah.
I mean, the guy, I forgot his name, Agrippa was like, you would have been free, but
Yeah.
you appealed, so, all right, go to Caesar, I guess. And so, I think it just shows, like, Paul's life, he could have chosen it to be very easy,
Yeah.
in the sense of, like, he could have just been a free man and just kind of chilled and hung out for the rest of his life and died a happy old man.
Yeah.
But, and like, that's the thing, it's like, I think God obviously called him to this, but he could have very easily chosen not to declare, I need to go see Caesar.
Right.
Like with predestination and all this different stuff, it's like, I think God obviously has a plan for us, but we choose whether or not we want to go on it.
Mhm.
And I think, because the centurions could have, he could have very easily not said, not agreed with Paul.
Right.
All the different stuff about, hey, like these soldiers who are trying to leave right now, if they leave, we're gonna die.
Yeah.
And he could have jumped off the ship with them and have left Paul to die on the ship, and so it's like, there's all these different things that God has ordained as far as like, things have to happen. I don't think God necessarily, predetermines how everything's gonna look and that everything's planned out. We have
Right.
a choice in the matter. We get to choose it, and Paul clearly has chosen this life of, I need to go to Caesar because this is what God has told me I need to do.
Yeah.
Not because I want to, and it would have been way easier not to.
Which makes sense to why the introductions in most of his letters start with something along the lines of, I'm a bondservant of Christ.
Yeah.
That's Acts 27.
Wow.
So if that's it, he doesn't want to be blinded again.
That's true. He likes to see where he's going.
Yeah. He has seen the light.
Well, he saw the light.
So, y'all, next week we are going to be decorating the church.
That's good.
And so the 30th, 2 weeks from today, is when we will finish off the book of Acts. Cool? Can't wait.
Sounds good.
So I gotta play a song, but do you wanna record it or not?
Yes, I want Luke to hear it.
Well, I'm not saying that. Just you keep the camera on, I just didn't know if you wanted to record it or not. It's up to you.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
While you set it up, I'm gonna run to the restroom real quick.
Can we hear it?
Yeah.
Oh, good.
That's why I brought my jam box.
Hey, I like it. I like it on Sunday, Britt, when they let you do a riff.
You gotta talk to that guy sitting over there in the corner so I can do more.
Yeah, I like it.
about to happen?
I'm gonna play a song for you, Steph.
Okay.
This is the right way. Gotta wait for Zach to
I'm
get
back.
back. All right, so this is a song that I wrote in 1986. No, 96. 96.
25 years.
I was in a band, we did all originals, and the name of our band was Damascus Road. And so this song's called Running on Damascus Road. And I thought it would be, it's probably appropriate more for Acts 9,
Yeah.
but, and so,
And it's old, so the tape sounds a little.
yeah.
Right there.
Times in our lives when we're looking for something to make us complete. Like Paul was on his way to Damascus when he fell at the Lord's feet. Sometimes it takes a thunderous roar to hear the call of the Lord. Sometimes merely a whisper put you in one accord. It blinded my eyes so I could not see, running on Damascus Road. His love opened them up to how wrong they could be, running on Damascus Road. Lord, I thought I was running to you, but I was just running away. You opened my heart with a blinding light. Thank you for that wonderful day. And I was running on Damascus Road, running on Damascus Road, running on Damascus Road, running on Damascus Road. Sometimes we get so involved with the world, we can't see the price we're paying. Must forsake the world and reunite with God's love, I pray. It doesn't matter which road you're on, when the Spirit of God arrives. Like a blinding light and a raging voice, God's will comes into our lives. It blinded my eyes so I could not see, running on Damascus Road. His love opened them up to how wrong I could be, running on Damascus Road. Lord, I thought I was running to you, but I was just running away. You opened my heart with a blinding light. Thank you for that wonderful day. And I was running on Damascus Road, running on Damascus Road, running on Damascus Road, running on Damascus Road.
This is you.
It doesn't matter which road we're on, when the Spirit of God arrives. Like a blinding light and a raging voice, God's will comes into our lives. Oh, it blinded my eyes so I could not see, running on Damascus Road. His love opened them up to how wrong I
Watching that on the Zoom, I kept expecting the screen to fade to black and credits to start rolling.
There you go.
And it never happened.
If we knew how to make
I was
that
jamming
happen,
out in my car over here. That was like a muscle memory of, I heard that song so much growing up that, especially when I was younger, that I was just jamming out.
I love it.
That was awesome.
So
Thank you
if
for
you have a
sharing.
cassette player, you can play it.
I did.
You have one too, Luke. I got you.
Thank you.
That sounds like it's stuck in my head all evening.
It's not a bad thing.
Not a bad
Years
thing.
ago.
We wrote some really good stuff, I thought, but
That was your hit?
You
that
know,
was our hit.
that makes you think about, are we all running the Damascus Road?
Yeah.
That's kind of what I'm saying.
I love it.
Yeah, but it's,
Well, Grady, you wanna close us in a word of prayer?
Absolutely. Father God, I just, I'm so grateful for this time, just able to gather, just out of your word, God. I think we can all take away that, we all are on our own Damascus road, where we are running, hopefully to you, but sometimes, during certain seasons, we might find that we're running away. But God, I think we can, again, just be reminded of Paul's story and just how, no matter what challenge he faced, no matter how scary it was, that he ran towards you, and he ran towards the plan that you have for him. That might lead him on a ship that gets wrecked in the middle of the ocean, it's tied up by ropes. But God, he really just had a faith that we are all just inspired by, that he knew that you were going to take care of him, that no matter what path he was on, that as long as you're with him, that he was going to be okay. Just leave from that and just really hold on to that truth that no matter what life has for us, as long as we have you, we're okay. So as we go from this place, God, I just ask that we're just reminded of that. Just find peace really does surpass all understanding. I love it so much. What's your name? Amen.
Amen. Online viewers, thank you for being here.
Adios.
We'll see you guys in a couple of weeks. Bye, Luke.
Bye, Steph. Bye, Luke.
Bye.